I am a cosmic being, an absolute continuous complex process, a department of universe's eternal, omniscient mind. A newer respect for truth, March 26, 2013. Control is a central issue when anyone's dead. The 24 hours of it are not extraneous or irrelevant to what we individually value as the substance essential to our existence. It is the basis upon which we stand, what we will stand for relative to the sensing and instrumental control in the communications process, self to self, self to others, otherness to self. This requires an understanding of what and who is controlling the experience and in charge of the truth of it, as well as the power of doing ever more with ever less in mind. See Section 504. It is the special case realization, the three-dimensional reality that is of a multidimensional universe and whose four-dimensional patterning is controlled by frequency and angle. To insist because you have the accumulative power of money wealth, about which Moyes' name writes in his book, The End of Power from Boardrooms to Battlefields and Churches to States, Why Being in Charge Isn't What It Used to Be. This entitles you to control events, similarly to New York Mayor Bloomberg, or as any predomination of the PR Jam belief system's officiousness of any self-designated level of interference like the stop and frisk, suppressive fiasco in that city, and oppressively calculating any degree of controlling people as a mastermind. Think again. Any number of people in any population can think for themselves. And we do not need to accept such power as the truth when clearly such conceptioning is inherently wrong. To think again would give a pause that any one of us could gloss over, dismissing what may immediately come into our conceptuality field. It is in the conceptuality field of thought where recognition initiates. It must be a recognition of the truth, which can evoke the winnable argument that also invites a discussion, conversation, the debate, which has, over the days, weeks, months, years, decades, shifted from the most economical statement of truth to what money can buy. Where money is the substance of the communicated sensing and buys the electronic media as the instrumental control over the individual's essential recognitions of its special case realization, such objectives, even as law is virtually enabled by the highest courts of the land, primarily accomplish what is anti-ephemeral. By contrast to what is ephemeral, which is doing ever more with less, as in fewer ergs of energy, anti-ephemeral is doing ever more with ever more against the individual's inherent right to control what goes on in the metaphysical, physical environment of his or her anticipatory conscience domains. The anticipatory conscience domain is wherein the process of thinking and thought are solely for one's internal control of distortion. Since we have been educated to expect money, wealth, and power of it are supposed to control the events of our lives for a whole lifetime, we may never look beyond that context, nor would we think to ascertain correlations between or inherent contradictions whereby power and control might concern the truth as an economic statement referential to the minimum something, the minimum structural system of universe. Awareness of the cosmic orderly vectors of the absolute energy network articulations gives us a newly perceivable respect for truth relative to non-otherness interference. Truth, in any event, is not without its complications. When a mind has no cosmic vectors to refer its supposedly democratic ideals and the essential values of a democracy. With a great deal of effort, we could probably trace the variously wrongly taken directions at every fork in the bifurcating road and truncations ensuing therefrom, snipping away at the initial conception of democracy, gradually altering it to what it has become. It has become a political oligarchy. The word oligarchy dates to the year 1542. It defines government by a few, whereby they exercise control for corrupt and selfish purposes. We could debate altruistically versus selfish purpose and find us on a slippery slope in such cases where a mayor, for instance, bans freedoms and further intend to finance influential platforms for a worthy cause. It is selfish because it undermines the individual voice in the matter, which might think of other alternative solutions than the overlording game. So correlation between power, which Moises Naam writes, is decaying for those who are in charge, and what is central in anyone's day concerning the truth of what we individually value as the very substance of our essential existence and control, turns out to be a conceptual matter after all. It is not a permanent or overlong PRJM belief system impediment, that's politics, religion, justice, military. Such obstacles prolong the agonies that throughout the minutes, hours of a day can nag at the psyche's inherent love of the truth. But truth seems to have been indoctrinated into belief systems where money is power. Control is relegated as a self-abnegation to its predominating personality, and where our individual instincts as well have been kidnapped as a property of the justice system, as but one case in point. Truth, as such, could have been taken as a property of the boss on the job, or the CEO in his or her corporate tower. Since truth is a direction, which in Omnirational Universe and the conceptuality of general systems thinking is in, out, and around, then self-control, the inherent self-discipline, is closest affined to the law of truth and not the power of money or fear-engendering laws. Those laws often have been politically devised for political gain, among other stipulating designations such as strains of the political enterprise complex. Oligarchies are in charge of that complex for controlling the substance of the sensing and instrumental controls as the physical means of communication that we naively assume are the unbiased news media, the dedicated public servant announcements, the internet and its service providers for social media networking. It is happening before our eyes within clarifying distances and directions of our individual abstract integrity observation. The abstract integrity observations take the patterns that intellect perceives as a conceptual abstract pattern. It goes from the physical environment to the metaphysical environment of thought. The systemic nature of a thought, therefore, is of a closest affinity to the law of truth, which is a conceptuality of the tetrahedrons, cosmic orderly vectors, in Bucky Fuller's discovery of the absolute energy network for recognizing the synergetic integral of all truths, or as close to a comprehension in the time it takes to define it. If we spend a whole lifetime empowering the ruling oligarchies of the BS complexes, PRJM belief system and strains of its political enterprise complex, then that is the extent to which we can perceive the truth as a basis upon which we stand, what we will stand for. But it leaves out, by default, a newer respect for truth, which could otherwise empower a quantum democracy to take its turn at the helm. Such a turn would invite individual economic initiatives that are mindfully conscious of one's own anticipatory conscience domain's omnirational control matrix and the ephemeralization of doing more with less. You hear that democracy is slow and wonder how it got that way when nature does things in the shortest time, and it is to nature's coordinate system that the QR era's quantum democracy conceptually refers a newer respect for truth. Thank you.